Okay, just wrapping up with category 3, promoting the success of all students. Just wanted to hit on two more standards. Standard 4, effective educational leaders, and this talks about developing curriculum, instruction, and assessment to promote each student's academic success and well-being. And then standard 1, which is all about mission, vision, and core values for schools. And I think hopefully my plan touches on both of those. By easing some of the stress and tension in the school, we're really allowing the other teachers to fully embrace the new reading program and support their instruction and curriculum development, and also just realigning that we are all going after the mission and vision of educating students, doing the best we can, and that there are certain expectations for all staff. And so let's move on to debrief and unresolved issues. So what am I thinking? I think there was way too much of a hands-off approach prior to the end of this case study. There were 4 calls to the superintendent and numerous parent complaints, and watching this teacher berate other staff, and that only led to one personal conference. If the principal had intervened earlier, she could have done more walkthroughs, had regular teacher-principal meetings, regular conferences like that, could have gotten a counselor involved to help kind of de-escalate the issue with disgruntled parents, could have been more, the counselor could have been called in to be more supportive both to Mrs. Horton and her students. In this situation, could be another pair of eyes on the situation. There could have been an action plan put into place about the lack of communication with parents, the unprofessional communication with staff, the expectations of just the general work expectations in the building. And I think that the lack of earlier intervention makes the current action plan seem a little bit extreme. All of a sudden, we're going to giving someone a leave without a ton of intervening prior to that. And then also, I would have wanted to make use of other strategies that we know are impactful in improving teacher performance, like mentoring with another senior teacher or something like that. Obviously, the confidentiality of personnel issues in this makes it more difficult to do that. But I think those are some options that would have been available if there had been some earlier intervention with these behaviors of Mrs. Horton's. Certainly feel regret that it's come to this point with this teacher. I certainly don't like conflict, and I really trust teachers to be professionals and to have a strategy for their behavior and their communication. And also sad to see a teacher who was once rewarded for her teaching ability to be in this state at this point in time. Mostly, though, because of my values around this situation, feel pretty angry. It's absolutely not okay to teach kids about emotional regulation and managing emotions, and appropriate communication with each other, and then to model the opposite of that. So what do I value? These are first graders. These are super vulnerable kids. I feel a strong need to protect them, and I think about how impactful elementary teachers are, and that their kids are basically with them all day, all year. And if these kiddos learn to hate school or fear teachers in first grade, I can't imagine how long it's going to take to undo that and kind of reset that for those kiddos. And so I really value adults who model emotional regulation and personal responsibility. And so that is certainly my top values and priority in coming up with the action plan that I did. So when we look at standard 2, how to manage instructional capacity and make that a priority in a building, I do feel that by reestablishing norms of professionalism and conduct and communication, that the whole school culture will benefit from that. It sounds like that was part of the norms of the school at one time, and possibly may have slipped, or certainly there's one teacher that's very visibly not following those norms. And I also think that by removing a toxic teacher, it allows children to kind of reestablish that feeling of safety so that they can learn. We know that when kids are agitated or anxious or in fight or flight, that their frontal cortex is unavailable to them. And that's just how we all work. And so making them feel safe, again, by giving them a little break from whatever's going on in that classroom, by bringing in a different teacher for a short period of time, hopefully will allow them to feel safe in a way that their bodies can be kind of grounded, their frontal cortexes can be back online, and they can actually learn. And so I also think that offering support and other chances to Mrs. Horton establishes that we have expectations. You absolutely have to meet them, but we're also, I'm here for you. And, the school is all about supporting people as well. So especially the EAS part is super important. Just establishing that, I want you to be okay so that you can help the kids be okay. I think this also hits on standard 7, which is that effective leaders foster a professional community of teachers and other professional staff to promote each student's academic success and well-being. We want all our teachers to be okay, and we want a very clear vision of professional behavior so that our kids can be okay and so that they're available to learn. So component number 1 is all about how does this plan promote the academic success of each student. I think that even though a change in teachers, just even in the short term, kind of shakes up what's happening in the classroom, I think that the use of a consistent long-term sub in this situation kind of minimizes the interruption in learning for these kiddos. I think that, again, students can't learn if they do not feel safe, so kind of reestablishing kindness and consistency and emotional regulation in class allows more learning to take place. And I think parent-teacher conferences are really measures of growth for students. And so I believe that if teachers are required to kind of discuss with parents where kids are at, and if there's deficits there, kind of have a plan that they talk about with parents about how to help those students kind of remediate those deficits, then teachers are really being held accountable for the academic success of each student. So really enforcing that we do parent-teacher conferences and we communicate with parents also holds teachers accountable for making sure that the academic success of each student, that there's a plan for that for each student. So for component 2, ensuring the personal well-being of each student, I definitely think that this is all about, as well, standard 5, which is about cultivating an inclusive, caring, and supportive school community that promotes the academic success and well-being of each student. I do think that all teachers kind of, again, this renorming of professional expectations, it allows all students to feel safe. That kind of level of tension and negative communication and conflict between staff should not be allowed to happen or be seen by students. I think that offering caring support to teachers and really pushing them to manage their stress and have the time and place to manage that stress outside of school enhances a feeling of well-being for staff, which of course is passed on to students. And I think that also limiting or somehow managing conflict between teachers and parents, as well as teachers and other staff, just in general decreases the tension in the overall school environment. I think it's very easy to tell just from walking into a building which schools feel happy and safe and which ones do not. And so I do think that one very toxic or kind of out of control teacher can really impact that for other teachers, and definitely for all kids, either in that part of the building or even in the entire school. Component 3 is all about enhancing the instructional capacity for the classroom and the school. And so I think that by, there's a lot of things about instruction, good instruction, and how much on-task time in classrooms there is. And I think that if kids are not learning and you have a teacher who's unprepared, your on-task time is obviously going to decrease in the classroom. So increasing task time in the classroom would be a benefit that could be experienced if a sub was brought in for a short period of time while Mrs. Horton kind of figured out what was going on with her emotional state and her lack of professional behavior. I do think that increasing supervision, like kind of the return plan for a teacher who's accused of being late and having unprofessional communication, would certainly hopefully enhance her instructional capacity and as well demonstrate that for other teachers. I think that reestablishing cohesiveness with staff and allowing people to be enthusiastic about the new program and kind of renorm professional expectations certainly impacts the other teachers in the building and their ability to embrace new programs, improve their teaching, and be able to kind of coordinate with each other and collaborate with each other without fear that they will be berated for that. So I think that is how this plan enhances instructional capacity. So in the end, the future of Mrs. Horton, best case scenario, Mrs. Horton goes, receives some support, and takes a moment to step away from the situation, and in doing so gains some perspective and insight, and feels a little more supported and like she's not out there on her own dealing with a lot of stress. Hopefully she returns with an ability to kind of filter her responses, increase her professionalism, meet school expectations, and in addition that she is more able to recognize in the future when she's kind of reached that limit for her, like when she's about to go to a place that's unprofessional, and perhaps can ask for time away, especially if she has an impending divorce and has some dates coming up that are very emotional, that she learns how to take some time for herself where that's not, some of that stress is not kind of coming into her classroom and into the school. Worst case scenario, Mrs. Horton returns. She's kind of in the same state, maybe more angry, still very defensive, not owning her piece of what is going on, and additional evaluation or remediation steps must be taken, again, in coordination with HR, the district, whoever else is involved at that point in time. I think if that were the case, again, one of the things I would do as part of my plan as a principal would be to add perhaps a paraprofessional to the room, or ask the counselor to be more involved in providing lessons and other things so that the students had lots of contact with professional and kind of balanced staff, and that they would be getting a lot of positive feedback from other staff if Mrs. Horton wasn't able to provide that. I also think that helps parents feel less concerned if they know that the kids are supported by loving individuals and consistent individuals kind of in their environment. Thank you so much for your time, and that is it for Mrs. Horton, A Good Teacher Gone Bad. Thank you.